Now, it's been another week in which political parties have gone viral for all the wrong reasons. So how important are optics as political parties scramble to show their relevance on especially these social media platforms? Earlier this week, DA leader John Steenhuisen had Twitterati in an uproar after the party posted a video showing him speaking rather awkwardly with a handful of black supporters standing awkwardly in the background waving South African flags. We chat now to the Chief Creative Officer of Avatar Agency Group, Veli Ngubane, who joins us via Zoom. Veli, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It must be a tough job if you work for an agency or indeed on a social media team in a political party in these very difficult times to come up with content that indeed will firstly reach the right market, but also not offend the wrong market. What did you make of this video that I just earlier mentioned from the DA that unfortunately went viral for all the wrong reasons?
Right. I think before we get to the output, there's a step behind that, which is the strategy, the targeting, and the planning. Now, if that is wrong, your output will be wrong. Now, the DA has a targeting problem where they seem to be targeting two conflicting markets in terms of the values and what they stand for. And that's why you see even the output being wrong. So I found it to be a targeting problem where they have a minority positioning, but they want mass market voters, and then you start having those type of problems where you know you want to appeal to black people, but your policies and where you are positioned is a very minority output. So I think it's a targeting problem, and that resulted in the optics and the viral video that we have.
Now, let's then talk to, if we're going from that step, from sitting down and strategizing about who we're speaking to, how we're going to speak to them, then you have to come with a production of this content. How would you look at something like this? If somebody came to you and said, this is the video that we've shot, we've got the leader standing front and center, it's a call to action that we want to put out there, what would your advice have been to them in terms of what those optics brought across?
Look, I think the social media age and where we are as consumers, we see through the optics. We see through the strategy. So authenticity, especially in political advertising, is very, very important because the market can see through what you are trying to communicate. And we need to see what symbols we are channeling. We need to see what that means to the consumer. So when you use the example of a flag, to the majority of South Africans, you need to understand what the flag means and what emotion is. So you find that authenticity is what you need in political advertising because your brand is so widely consumed every day. So if you go out and you've got a policy that sort of like ignores racial divisions, economic divisions, and then you come out with a unity message. And you come out with a very outdated positioning of the rainbow nation, which is now questioned because politically you can have a rainbow nation and unity, but now we're in a different form of politics, which is economics, all right? So you can't call for a unified nation if you're not addressing the economics of the people because people will see that. So I think the best thing that I would advise is be authentic and let your message align with your policies because the consumer is now too sophisticated to be, you can't put out an ad if you don't stay true to what that ad communicates.
Do you think the problem is that we take a lot of our lead when it comes to political party messaging and advertising from the Americans and how they do things? And I mean, we know that there is a massive multi-billion-dollar machine that goes to town when it's election time in America and how they communicate to their audience. Is there a feeling that we lean too much in that direction when our market is not really open to that kind of messaging and that kind of overproduced advertising?
It's problematic because our problems as South Africans are real, are very recent. So you find that the messaging is current. You know, the divisions brought upon by apartheid are still lived. So it's very, very problematic to try emulate a very different type of political advertising. And again, as we go into a local elections, it's very important to know that our problems are localized, our problems are felt. We live through it. So you find that messaging and the authenticity of the messaging becomes very important. And it's very important to know what parties stand for and the consistency that parties stand for. You look at the ANC, a very consistent message throughout the time. We know what it stands for, and that's why the voter responds to that. A party like the DA that is constantly in a state of change. And even in that ad, Mr. Steenhuisen talks about change. And you kind of wonder, what is the change that he's talking about? Is he talking about the change back to a previous way of leading, or is he? So it becomes very confusing. So the consistency of message and positioning becomes very important, because our politics is lived daily by the masses of this country.
Just very quickly, before I let you go, it is also unprecedented times that political parties find themselves in. We're still supposed to have a local government elections coming up this year, and yet we cannot have gatherings. We've got virtual conferences and meetings taking place, and I'd assume that political party rallies won't be able to take place. So that will be a challenge for parties that still depend on that more traditional way of rallying their supporters. These platforms like social media, whether it be Twitter or Facebook or even Instagram, for those who are a little bit more with it, are going to continue to be extremely key in the near future and, of course, the long-term future as well.
No, definitely. So we catalyzed our adoption of digital, and that becomes very important. But it's a very different space to operate in, because when you're in a political rally, the people that you're speaking to do not have the instant power to question your message or comment. Now, if you put out a message like the DA did, instantly people commented. People show they dislike, they show their personalization of a horrendous ad, where you can kind of see the strategy behind it, and you can actually start answering. So political parties will have to develop very quickly to understand it. People will need media training. People will need social etiquette training. We've seen people do disastrous stuff because you can say stuff in public and it's not immediately questioned by the masses. But you put out a tweet now, people will start questioning it. So it needs a development in brand understanding from our political leaders. It needs an understanding of the new space that is digital. So agencies, marketing consultants need to be closer to political parties, because what you say, I mean, we've seen people's careers being destroyed off social media. So you need the proper social media training and a digital understanding to operate in this new political reality that is digital, because you can't do without it. But you need to make sure that all your political principles are trained to be able to navigate this new space, which has got instant feedback from the voters.